Morning, everyone, and welcome to our daily work. Today is Tuesday, February 1st. Glad you could join me for our time together. So you see, I've moved into the sanctuary, trying to help our internet connection and our camera connection. Must be something in the fireside room that's causing me, and that end of the building, that's causing me internet issues. I'm working on that. I'm hoping to get some new hotspots installed soon, but for now, I'll just be in the sanctuary to share in our daily word. So hope you're ready for the weather that apparently is coming. I've seen all kinds of forecasts from snow to ice to just to rain. I don't know, but hopefully you're prepared for the weather that's coming. And we'll continue our daily word, even if I'm at home. Because of snow, we'll continue our daily word in the days to come. So for our scripture for this morning, you may say, Jim, what does this even mean? If you read those verses, what does this even mean for us as we talk about this? But hear these words from 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 1 through 2. Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to the exiles in the dispersion of Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, who have been chosen and destined by God the Father and sanctified by the Spirit to be obedient to Jesus Christ and to be sprinkled with his blood. May grace and peace be yours. And so we hear these words about Peter. And we of course come to love Peter and who Peter is for us. Many of us claim that we would be like Peter, that we'd be impetuous, that we would jump off the boat to walk in the water, that we'd cut off the soldier's ear. We'd like to claim that we'd be different than Peter in our denial at the cross, although I'm not sure we would be. And then this idea about who Peter is, and when Jesus reinstates him, asking him these questions, do you love me? And then there's Peter, of course, Peter that's in history have been said to be the very first pope. Peter, who's buried in where the Pope is in St. Peter's Basilica. So Peter has this long history in Scripture and in our lives and about who Peter is and even our own comparisons to who Peter is and who Peter might be in our lives. But Peter wasn't always Peter. We meet Peter, if you go back in the Gospels, we meet Peter first in his life when he's on his way to meet Jesus. And here's what we know. John the Baptist was in the midst of baptizing, and he pointed two of his disciples to Jesus, and they went after him. One of those was Andrew. And John in the gospel tells us this. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, we have found the Messiah. That is the Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. Simon, the brother of Andrew. And they go and find Simon and say, we have found the Messiah. And they bring Simon to meet Jesus. And I don't think we always realize that in our lives, people that we meet, circumstances that happen to us, friendships that we make, they're so critical in our lives. We don't always accept them or know what they're going to be about. We don't realize it, but often later and in retrospect, we remember how people have affected our lives and changed us. There's something about them that makes a difference for them. We go on later, and Jesus says to Peter, you are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas, which, when translated, is Peter. You see, this meeting of Simon to Jesus changes Simon's life. He becomes Peter. Jesus really says, and we read it in the gospel, "You are Peter, and upon this rock, you, Peter, upon this rock, I will build my church." Peter, in his life then, takes on the persona of who Jesus is. And he shares the message, and he becomes this apostle of Jesus Christ. From Simon, the brother of Andrew, to Peter, the apostle of Jesus Christ. Can you imagine that in his life? And I thought this scripture was so important to us because, sometimes I don't think we value ourselves and our names and where they came from and who we are and the person or the people who introduced us to Jesus. It may have been our parents, it may have been Sunday school teachers, it may be a grandparent, a step-parent, someone who adopted us. We may have just wandered in off the street and been attracted to whatever's happened in the life of a church, and we become then enamored with this idea of who Jesus is. And I believe for us that if Simon, who is introduced to us in Scripture as the brother of Andrew, and then Simon, who's introduced to Jesus, who then Jesus says, "You're going to be called Peter. And upon this rock, you, Peter, I'm going to build my church." And then Peter has this amazing history. I think it reminds us of our call and our connection and our meeting of who Jesus is in our lives that changes us, that compels us to be different, that calls us to love. As I said in my sermon on Sunday, calls us to love fiercely, calls us to put aside hatred and hate of the other side of the political spectrum and hate of the other side of the people's color of their skin or whoever they are. Because we've encountered Jesus, because we know who Jesus is, we can't be that way any longer. We just have to stop. We just have to look at life differently and expect that because of who we are, the world's going to be radically different. I believe that. I believe that because of my encounter with Jesus, because of my trying to live his life, and through me, though I make tons of mistakes with it and through it and in it, I want to be reminded that Jesus can say to me, "Jim, I want to build my church on you, the rock. And here's your task." We encounter Jesus in all of our lives. And I think for us, we don't have to be like Peter. We don't have to be extraordinary. We don't have to walk on water. We don't have to, cut off the ear of a soldier. We don't have to even be reinstated necessarily. We don't have to be the Pope. We don't have to do any of that stuff. We meet Jesus. He calls us by name, calls us to love fiercely and radically, and to put aside everything else. And then to use that love and that call and that thing that makes us different after we meet Jesus, to then make the world a better place. Betsy and I were talking about this yesterday when we were trying to get our work done, but we kept having this conversation about love. We decided in some cases in our lives that we're not very old, we're sometimes old-fashioned in our thinking about that if we're faithful, if we love God and love our neighbor, that the world can indeed be a better place. Not that we have to go back to old ways, back to how we think it used to be with, lightning bugs and all this stuff. But today, in the moment, in this place where we live, we are not beyond hope. And Simon, whose life is changed by Jesus, who becomes Peter. All of us, as we live our lives, that's really what we are called to. And it's amazing, and it's incredible, and it's a great gift. You know, when Simon met Jesus, because Andrew went and told him, he had no idea his life was going to be changed in such a radical way. Who are we telling about Jesus? Who are we telling and saying to, we found the Messiah? Who are we reaching out to? I think, this call on us is powerful, and it's radical, and it seeks to change us. And I pray that we would take hold of it. And in this First Peter, I just love how it begins. Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, because his life is changed. And that's amazing, and it's a gift. And it should remind us of God's attachment in our lives. And then the call to love fiercely. So that's our word for today. I hope it speaks to you in some way, even in a small way, to accept God's call on your life. Thanks for joining me this morning. Have a great day. Know of God's love that surrounds you. Know of my love for all of you. And I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Have a great day.